Hi, welcome to another episode of Meet the Author. Tonight we have Brian Jud as our guest. Brian is an author, book marketing consultant, speaker, seminar leader, was a television host of The Book Authority, and president of Premium Book Company that sells books to non-bookstore buyers on a non-returnable commission basis. Brian is also the executive director of the Association of Publishers for Special Sales. Brian is the author of How to Make Real Money Selling Books Without Worrying About Returns. I actually have this book myself, and it's excellent. Leave that right there. This is the ultimate do-it-yourself guide to selling your books to non-bookstore buyers in large quantities with no returns. He also wrote Beyond the Bookstore. That's the book we have over there. You can focus on it. A Publisher's Weekly Book, a primer on non-bookstore marketing. So hi, Brian. Tell us about yourself and how you began your career as an author.
Sure. I started out, I was in the corporate world for about 20 years. And I was laid off a couple of years in a row and decided I wanted to try something different. And I thought, how hard could it be to write a book? And so I started to write. I had twin boys about to graduate from college. And so I started compiling some notes to help them get a job and move out of the house. And it worked. So I started writing a book.
I just want to mention, because you said you were laid off and then you found something new to do.
Right.
And people don't realize that being laid off sometimes is a plus and not a minus.
Oh, very much so.
And it's what you do with it and turning negatives into positives. We just had a guest the other show teaching students in high school how to succeed at the workplace and how to find a job. So, don't be discouraged if you get laid off, because you can become like this amazing person, Brian Jud.
Thanks.
So I understand that you're executive director of the Association of Publishers for Special Sales.
Right.
What is it that you do, and how do you work with CAPA, which is the Connecticut Association of
Authors and Publishers
Association?
Yeah.
I belong to that, and I got it wrong.
Actually, there's a Small Publishers Association of North America, which has been an association for about 15 years. And they had some turmoil there, and they wanted to disband it, so I told them I would take it over, and did so. And I changed the name from the Small Publishers Association of North America to the Association of Publishers for Special Sales, because my background is primarily in non-bookstore marketing. So I just wanted to tie that all together. And then part of that, we have about 40 partner groups around the country, one of which is CAPA. And it's the Connecticut Authors and Publishers Association. Actually, I'm the founder of CAPA. I started that 20 years ago.
And you were one of the presidents.
And so we work with them. The CAPA members, who are also members of APPS, get all the benefits of the National Association. We get discounts on a variety of different services and products, and so we work with the local groups to provide their members with the resources of a national association.
So we'll get a little bit more into that. And you also told me that there's going to be an APSS conference coming in October in Philadelphia. You can fill us a little bit later on that, but I don't want to forget that.
Sure.
What I'm interested in is that this idea of special sales, that you don't really hear too many book marketing people or publishers talking about special sales outside the bookstore. Can you tell us a little bit about where you got this idea? And this is sort of like a niche in a way, how you got into this?
Well, it's a large niche. Actually, the special sales, the non-bookstore market, the sales are larger than the bookstores. It's about 16 billion for non-retail, about 14 for the bookstores. But it's something that I got started in it because when I first started writing my book and publishing it, I thought you sell books through bookstores. That's the way that you do it, as I thought. So I got into Barnes & Noble and Borders and all the stores that were back then. And I found out that those books are all on consignment. If they don't sell, they're returned. And they can be returned in damaged condition. You still have to give full credit for them. And distribution discounts were 60 to 65%. They get paid 90 to 120 days. There's got to be a better way. So a real key question, Jason, and I asked myself, who else can use the information in my book? And it was about how to get a job. So I thought it wasn't just that people are unemployed. I could find these niches. I started selling it to colleges, to state governments, to corporations. And these niches, I could compete with those. I could sell on a non-competitive basis. And I sold the books at a retail price in many cases, non-returnable.
And you didn't mention, and this I was really interested in, you didn't mention the military. That's one of your,
Well,
that's one of the places.
Sure, I didn't start out to sell a lot of books there initially, but actually I got a call one day from
Prison system, military. People don't think about these places. There are places of work that want to give presents to their workers. Actually, I was approached once for one of my CDs. My workplace approached me. They heard about a CD I put on relaxation techniques, and they wanted to give that as the gift, the Christmas gift, so to say, to all the workers of hundreds of people. They wanted to purchase that.
Sure.
So these are good ideas.
Well, I got a call one day from a prison librarian, wanted to buy my job search book. And I said, why? He said, well, people get out of prison, and we want to make sure they're trained to get a job. And I never would have thought of that. So I sold 1,500 books to other prison librarians, and I thought, who else is in a similar situation? Well, the military.
And prisons have libraries.
It's still 1,500 prison libraries.
What's like the weirdest place that you never expected to sell books?
Probably the middle of a lake.
The middle of a hotel or what?
No, there's a floating bookstore in the middle of a lake.
Get out of here.
And actually, it'll be in my newsletter this week.
Where is it?
It's in Minnesota.
Oh my
There's a
God.
lake, and they actually have a raft out there with books on it, and people, they can just pull their boat up to this raft. It's an enormous raft, and people pull their boat up to that. They can take books out, and they can they can buy the books there, or they can read them. So that's probably the most different place I've seen. Although we sell books through vending machines, so that's not typical. So that's the real benefit.
You talk about vending machines, like I fish, and now they have vending machines that sell bait.
Sure.
So why not,
Yeah. Well, in a place like a train station or a bus station, you don't have room for a large bookstore, but you can have, which we do. We have vending machines there with books, and people can just purchase that for their bus ride or their train ride.
Did you ever think of, when you say you sell books to vending machine companies, did you ever think of, as part of your company, maybe purchasing book vending machines and supplying that yourself?
No, I don't want to get involved.
That's out of your getting
We
involved.
provide the books for them. With my clients, we put my clients' books in there, and somebody else can do all the work.
Can't do it all, right?
Well, it's a lot of time to go around all these different places and restock the books. And
Can't do everything.
I don't want to do that.
So tell us about the APS National Conference that's coming up in October.
Sure, it's
And
something
who would be interested in that?
Anybody who wants to sell books in large quantities, all non-returnable. So it's a conference to help people learn about how to sell to non-bookstore buyers. How to sell. We'll have speakers about. Actually, our keynote speaker is the vice president of special sales for Random House. Last year we had the special sales director for Simon & Schuster. So we have these.
You're saying, from what I'm hearing you right now, that there are special divisions within major book companies that are specializing in special sales.
Oh, sure. For
That's
the top
I never knew.
publishers, sure. They have the Simon & Schuster sells hundreds of millions of dollars every year in non-bookstore marketing. They put the books or coupons for a book in a box of cereal or something. They put that together.
Okay.
So the smaller publishers do it themselves. The larger publishers, they do it themselves, but they have a total sales force to
Now,
sell that.
what would you say to the person who's coming out with their first book and they want to self-publish? Is this something that person also would be interested in the APSS convention?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, it's something we show people. Step one, there's a lot of information or a lot of technique for non-bookstore marketing that can be done before the book's even written or while it's being written. You can have concept of product placement, where if your character in a novel is jumping into a car, have them jump into a BMW or a Lexus, and then with digital printing, you can print one book at a time, so you can have it, take it to BMW or to Lexus or to Ford or Chevrolet or any company, and get some pre-publication sponsorship money.
Is that were you talking about print on demand, or are you talking about something else?
Well, digital printing is different from print on demand.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I see what you mean.
using digital printing, print on demand is a way to get published using digital printing.
Right.
So anybody can use digital printing, which is
Okay.
a viable printing option.
Mm-hmm.
So, but the idea is you can print one book at a time.
Oh, okay. But since we did bring up the topic of print on demand, you also did webinars for a major print on demand company called Create Space, which
Right.
is an Amazon.com company.
Yep.
And I remember when I started to to self-publish my own material, I'd actually, the first time I saw you was your webinars for Create Space. Can you
Sure.
tell us a little bit about how that started, what your webinars were about?
Sure. I did a lot of consulting to the precursor of CreateSpace, it was Book Surge.
I started my book on Book Surge, and I was one of the first authors that came out with Create Space because I was with Book Surge when they switched over to Create Space in 2009, 2010.
So I came along with the package, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
and I hit it off well with the people at CreateSpace, and they were looking for a different way of presenting the material to a larger audience. So we set these up. We would get 5,000 and 6,000 people to a webinar. But I was doing it on not just on special sales marketing. I did several on those. I did monthly.
These webinars were also archived, right? Because I did
Yes.
see them archived.
Yes, you can go to the CreateSpace Center now and their website. But they're on planning, on how to get on TV and radio shows, how to perform on TV and radio shows, how to get in bookstores, how to do publicity, how to do special sales marketing, finding these buyers and organize. So we did 12 for about 4 years. I did for CreateSpace. I did monthly webinars for them. But to answer your question, it was I started out through Book Surge and then just worked my way into CreateSpace and built upon that because they wanted additional content for their resource center. So I wrote a lot of articles for them, and I've written a lot of articles for a variety of different publications and book marketing publications. I'm on a variety of blogs now, so I'm doing a lot of writing and just on a variety of book marketing topics and get these out to these different places.
So that brings us to the next question, which you almost already answered part of it, but we can go into a little bit more in detail. And this is a very important point. It says if authors are not good or do not want to sell to different buyers or corporate buyers or just get out there and sell their material, how can you help them too? And I just want to add that from this show, and I've seen it with authors because I'm involved with marketing through CAPA for helping authors, there are authors who think, and even artists, for instance, they think that I'm going to paint the painting or I'm going to write the book and let the publishing company, let the gallery sell the stuff, and I'm just going to do what I know how to do, paint and write. And that, I don't know if that cuts it today or does, or do you have to be part of your own marketing? When do they come to you?
The author is in charge of the marketing. My favorite quote is, if it's to be, it's up to me. The publishers have front list 2 or 3 times a year, so they bring in new titles, new authors every 4 to 6 months. And the publisher will do some initial publicity to get the program started. But it's up to the author to get the buzz really going. And you have to go out and do I wrote a book called Perpetual Promotion.
Do you have a copy of that here?
No, I've written 17
Perpetual,
of these.
say that again?
17 of these books. I don't have.
Right.
Perpetual Promotion.
Perpetual Promotion, okay.
Because the idea was that you have to promote
Continue.
perpetually.
It's true.
And it's something that you're always doing something every day for all your books that you have. But you can't rely on someone else to have that same passion you have for your book, the same energy that you have, the same knowledge you have about your book. So the more that you can go out there and do this work, the much more likely you are to reach people. Because people have to hear about a new book 7 to 10 times before they actually make the purchase.
Well, I'm going to give you an example from myself when I first put out one of my first books. And you do have to be involved with the sales process and the marketing process because that even helps you to design and choose what is going to be your next book. Now, the very first book I put out was for ADHD, and it was a color book, so I couldn't find a book company that wanted to market it at the time because they said it was going to be very expensive to market, and I didn't make it into a movie yet. So I made it a very small 40-page book for sort of like a children's book.
Sure.
And when I took it to a book distributor, he looked at it and said to me, because the book was so small, even though it was very important and packed with new information, he said, "Oh, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs," meaning that the book was so small, he, being a distributor, would have a hard time placing that book on a bookshelf. And lo and behold, I learned that maybe, the book has to stand, they're only interested in how the book shows in the store and not necessarily the content. And that's something important that I learned about putting out a book by being a self-publisher and helping with my own marketing experience. So, do you have anything to say about your experience with authors with that?
I do. Actually, there's a couple points that came up there. One thing, before I came out with Job Search 101, which is my first book, I had never published a book before, so I wanted to see how to do it. So I went to the bookstores, and all the career books are on one shelf, and they're all alphabetical by author. So where would Jud be on the shelf, and who's nearby me? And they're all 6x9 books on different topics. I want to see what the pricing was, what the color was, what the covers looked like, what their content was. And because they were all 6x9s, I came out with an 8.5x11 book, which really stood out from everybody else. And but it had a little bit smaller spine because of that. Excuse me. And it's really important to have a good spine width on that. But if you write a 40-page book, that's another reason why you should not sell in bookstores. Because what I did, I went to the colleges, and the college students were frugal. They don't like to read. They didn't want to buy a $14.95 book. If they had an interview tomorrow, they want to read everything about interviewing so they could do their interview. So I took the chapters out of the book, and one on resumes, cover letters, interviewing, telephone techniques, and made 32-page booklets out of those, and sold those to the colleges, and they gave them to the students.
Well, it's a good thing you brought up the idea about the spine, because when I initially did the book without the spine, it's because I lived out of the country and I had to send it by mail to the United States, to Amazon.com, and they were ordering from self-published people like myself only 2-3 books at a time. So cost efficient, it wasn't so cost efficient to send 1 or 2 books by airmail and then pay the amount of money it costs to publish the book and then also pay the commission to Amazon.com. So you're left with very little money left over, and that's why I had to make a very lightweight book, really for mail order. But then when I went and tried to take that same book and put it on the shelf, that's where I saw all this, like, what goes for mail order or what goes for ebook is not necessarily something that's going to stick up on the shelf. But then I learned to tell them, why don't you just stand it up in the window and not necessarily put it on the shelf. When I did that, so that was a whole separate story.
Right.
What are some of the pros and cons of the various ways to get published?
There are several ways to get published. One is through the royalty publishing. Most people want to go through a royalty publisher where you get the publisher to put up all the money and pay you a royalty on sales. That is nice, but they can change the name of the book, the title of the book, which they did for mine. They can change the content, which they did for mine, and it becomes their book. So they can change it. It usually takes a long time to have the book actually published and printed. So, and you may get 10% of the sale. But if you have a $20 book, you don't get 10% of the $20. If it's a 60% discount, they're only receiving $8 a book.
They have overhead too.
So you get 10% of the $8, and that's before returns. So, and there's a 25 to 30% return rate. So it's not a very lucrative way to do it, but they put up money up front. You still have to do the promotion. And then there's independent publishing, which is basically what I did. You become a general contractor. You find the editor, the cover designer, the page layout artist, the printer, and you have it all put together for you. And it's more expensive, but you get 100% of the revenue on the back end. There's print on demand, where you go to a company like CreateSpace, and they do all the production for you, and then you buy it from them. But generally, you buy it from them at 40% off list price, and so you can't sell it because retailers want 50%, distributors want 60%.
You can't. That would be hard to sell in a bookstore or
anywhere.
But if you're going to sell it yourself, though, it's not so bad if you're doing like an author signing. So, like for instance, I have a book on CreateSpace that costs $19, but it only cost me $5 after shipping each book.
Yeah, but you're still selling one at a time.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's
That's
good.
the
You know,
point.
you have
That's it.
like 10 to 50 when you do your own author signing, so then it's worth it.
Yeah, if you
But
print in
not
large
for-
quantity.
But not if you have to
print-
put it in a bookstore, yeah.
If you print it in large quantity, if you print using offset process instead of digital, you can excuse me, get a much more of a margin. So you can do that. But still, you're selling one at a time. If you want to sell
I mean, it's
10,000...
only if you're going to sit at tables selling books as an author and not really to put it in a bookstore, that'll be hard. Then you do have to print it yourself.
Well, you never have to
Okay.
print it yourself. But
Or
say you
get
print in
somebody-
larger quantities,
Or larger quantities.
and they get a lower cost. You need to drive that unit cost down so you're more profitable.
And also I find the shipping itself is cheaper when you do it in larger quantities, and that's part of the price.
Well, in non-bookstore marketing, they pay for shipping. You don't pay for shipping. The customer pays for it.
And just to finish up very quickly, so you didn't show, I don't think you showed the book. You have over there 2 other books.
Well, these are ones that my first book. These are out of print.
They're out of print.
Yeah.
Did you want to show that? You talked about it? Just how you started.
Well, this is just the Job Search 101 with the book that my first book that was 8.5 by 11 because I wanted to get the larger shelf presence, and it was sold through the retailers.
Mm-hmm.
I had that translated into Spanish as the first book was El Trabajo 101, which sounded good to me because I don't speak Spanish. But outside the U.S., 101 means nothing. In the U.S., it's the basic course. So I had to have the whole thing retranslated into the Elementos Básicos para Buscar Trabajo, and had that done. It's really important to make sure that you have somebody who speaks that language as a first language, not as a second language, and have the translation done that way. So I learned that lesson very quickly.
And when you had that translated into Spanish, that was mainly for the American market, or you also had the idea of outside the country?
Outside the country also.
Well, before, we'll finish very shortly, but I'll just give you my experience. As I said, I lived outside the country, and I knew book distributors there who paid about $2,000 for the rights to translate books in that country. And it was easy for them because they didn't have to do the advertisement on these very famous books. They only had to get the rights for $2,000. Let's say Harry Potter, maybe it cost more, and then translate it. So it was easier for them to market. And they also have a thing in Europe called the Bookmeister in Germany, where you can go and learn about distributing your books to the foreign market. Do you have anything to say about somebody who wants to have their book be worldwide in other languages, what they have to do?
Sure, there are a variety of ways to do it. You can have the book translated, as we did, or you can sell the rights to it. You can go to Frankfurt Book Fair, which is coming up in a few months, and
That's the Bookmeister.
you can sell the rights to other publishers at that point. So other publishers can translate your book. They can purchase the rights for it in their country. So there are a variety of ways of doing it. Amazon.com has several different websites. I think it's French and German and
Does
Spanish.
Amazon do the translation,
No,
or do
they
you have
just-
you
they
give
just-
it to them and they'll
correct.
send it out to the other countries in that language? Oh,
Well, they
that's
put
a
it
good idea.
on the internet.
Online, yeah, on the internet.
So it's
Oh, okay.
But it's in those. So you can get distribution that way already. But again, that's bookstore distribution, or it's. If you want to sell 10,000 books through retail, you sell one book to each of 10,000 people. And the corporate side, which is the area I specialize in, you sell 10,000 books to one person. So it's much more profitable. They pay the shipping charges, and you make more money. And you can become a spokesman for the company, a spokesperson for the company. You can get recurring revenue.
Yeah, and that brings up a good point. Sometimes the book itself is not about selling the book, but it's about branding yourself as a speaker, as an expert.
Sure. So for how to make real money selling books, this book, I do that primarily as an expensive brochure. I go out to these publishing groups around the country and speak to them and sell books, but I get a lot of consulting business from that. So I use that as a brochure for that. And it's really,
pass it out.
Yeah. But
So,
but the binding, the point that you're alluding to, or you brought up, I tell people they'll be more profitable when you stop selling your books.
Oh, I remember you saying that. It's true.
You sell
I
the
agreed
content,
with
sell
that.
the information in it.
Correct.
And that's the critical thing. How can people use it? And what I suggest is creating what I call a PAR statement. Take a sheet of paper and put it in 3 columns of problem, action, result. And the problem may be, when do I use a chronological versus a functional resume? The action is I have a checklist in the book that describes when to do that. The result is you get a job faster. That's what people want. So that's what you're selling in your promotion, your publicity, your literature. You're selling the fact that my book will help you get a job faster. And that's selling the information. Going to a book signing, and I suggest you don't do a book signing, you do an event. I would do a signing and people did not come to buy my book. I would do an event, how to get a job. People come to learn how to get a job. And oh, by the way,
And by the way, I
here's
have
my
these
book.
books on the
Yeah, that's right.
side, or you can hire me for other places to give a talk.
Also, you stop selling your book in the sense that I went to several different states and I was trying to sell the Job Search 101. And they loved the book, but they didn't want to buy it because they did a lot of workshops. And you have a perfect bound book and you try to play it down, it doesn't lay flat. So I went to Staples, took the binding off, put a spiral binding on it so it would lay flat, took it back to the States, and one state ordered a blanket order of 8,000 books a quarter because I changed the binding on it. See, I was selling not the book, but the information. So I took that same concept to other states, and they just bought it because it would lay flat while they were doing workshops.
I'm very happy you said that. We'll close with that. You know, you brought up a very good point because I learned that the hard way. I was giving book signings, and sometimes people wanted to hear my hour lecture, and they loved it, and they would pack the place, but then I would sell like 2 books. And then I learned to request compensation for the lecture because I wrote the book, and they were very happy. They didn't care if I sold any books or not. They wanted me to give the lecture, and they paid for the lecture, and then some people bought books. So I totally agree with you. Any last closing points you'd like to share with the audience?
When you're writing a book, do think about the whole process, and it's going to take a long time to occur. And I say that it's as simple as PI. If you look at PI as an acronym, you plan, implement, and evaluate. Do the preparation first. Do the research. Find out what already exists on your topic. How is your information different from and better what's already out there? And then implement it. Do all your action for your perpetual promotion, and then evaluate your results. If you're not getting on a lot of TV shows, maybe your media kit's not well. If you're on a lot of TV shows not selling books, maybe you need to do a little bit better media training, or maybe you need to get whatever the action is. Set a goal for that, and then evaluate your progress, and then make necessary changes. So, look at this as a long-term process, and work and evaluate your progress as you're going along, and make changes, and then just keep at it.
Experiment and innovate. Well,
Yeah,
Brian,
that's good.
thank you. You really honored me by being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Jud.
And I want to thank you very much. You did
Thank you.
fantastic work.
Thank you for having me on the show.
It was Brian Jud tonight. Thank you.
We're good.
Great.
Thank you.